Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast are of the presenters and the presenters only and do not represent the views, opinions, or strategies of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Please like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 75. We're going to cover some managerial harassment this evening. Like we're all in the house tonight. Myself, James, Bill, and Toasty is back with us. How was your week, Toasty?
I'm just glad that the election's on Tuesday, so I don't have to deal with these political ads anymore between these two candidates, which has been killing me on my route. Opened up two more CBU stops, which of course I'm not going to get paid for. I'm already 48K anyways, but those interim route adjustments still aren't in the system. Other than that, it's been warming up quite a bit here in Texas. We actually hit our first 100-degree day on Saturday. And it's only May and not even close to June, July, or August. That's usually when we have our hottest days. So I've just been drinking about a gallon of water a day as much as I can. And got some Gatorade Zeros that I drink in the morning and afternoon just to make sure I stay hydrated. Other than that, same old, not a whole lot to do. How about you, James? How was your week?
Oh, it's about heavy box holder week this week. I had 4 of them this week. Um, Luckily, the last one was put on my case on Friday after I had loaded my truck and had just finished loading my truck. So it's like, well, I ain't taking that today. So it went out yesterday, and but kind of warm over the week. Blew out my AC unit at my house, so I had to get that repaired this week. That was a pain in the half.
Hold. Explain how you blew that out.
I was clearing the brush from around it with hedge trimmers and cut a hole in the high pressure line. And so I had to get a repair out and recharge the system, and it's working just fine again now. So it wasn't too bad, but still cost me some money to fix that up. But got AC working again. And to preface that also, I bought a little Craftsman 20-volt battery operated fan, and I put it on a half tray right in front of the window on the passenger side of the LLV to blow air in the truck. And I will tell you that leaving that fan on when you get out of the truck keeps it cooler in there, for me at least, in Michigan. Don't know if it'll work for people in Texas, but it works for me, and it's just a little bit of extra air movement when the truck is off and that dash fan heater isn't working. But this weekend, pretty much a normal weekend for me. Mowed the lawn, did the usual rigmarole of weekend stuff, and tomorrow is Memorial Day, where we remember those who gave their all in the sacrifice of protecting our freedoms. So, looking forward to celebrating their sacrifice tomorrow. How about you, Bill? How was your week?
Oh God, my week was easy. And an extra week off for my operation because nobody could read my charts correctly and have me discontinue my medication before the surgery, so they had to push it back 10 days. So that was wonderful news. It was funny though that I was off because of the fact that I didn't know I was off with all the phone calls I received from carriers all over the area in regards to the missing barcodes on the carrier pickups, what constitutes second trips, PTFs over RCAs for Sundays. I mean, the whole litany of questions thrown at me this week. I thought I was, on the question and answer line for the NRLCA because, so many items are coming up for discussion in regards to what management cannot do. And I spent 40 minutes with a gentleman, and at the end of it, he says, I really ought to join the union. He says, I appreciate you that, father asked me if I was in the union. I says, if I help you, I help the office, I help everybody in that office. Somebody in there is in the union. So, basically it's a trickle down theory. You help everybody, and like hell that, somewhere down the line, you reap the rewards for that assistance. Um, like I said, I had one grandson Friday night, and we have the other grandson tonight. It's a wonderful weekend, and please, what anybody does, do not thank service members who are in the store, at the gas station, anything for their service in regards to Memorial Day. This is the day that we celebrate the sacrifice that so many have made for us to have these freedoms. It's not the live military personnel. It's the ones who have given their all. Want to give any thanks, you give it to the family members of these fallen soldiers and medical people that have put their lines and their written the blank check for you, and this country's cashed it in. So make sure that you're aware of that, okay, and be appropriate in regards to what you say to service members as you run into them this week or tomorrow. But Kristen, how was your week?
Oh, not too bad. Monday was the day from hell, as usual. Tuesday, I wrapped up the OJT for the newest RCA, and she split her out Friday and Saturday with my sub and taking half on her own and flip-flop what half she took. So she's still with us so far. And then, I worked my K-Day yesterday, obviously, if my sub was on the other route. Other than that, pretty straightforward week for the most part. And this coming up this week, I work what hell we're gonna have on Tuesday. And then I'm doing OJT for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on the next new RCA. So, and then I'll be off my K-Day for my bonus son's graduation open house on next Saturday. So, really hasn't been all that exciting of a week. It got warm. Had to get the left-hand door of my LLV replaced because the cord cranks the window up and down snapped, and I guess it's easier for VMF just to send a whole nother door. So we got that fixed. So luckily I can get some cross breeze on the warmer days. That definitely makes a difference. But other than that. And I'm going to take a moment, guys, if you don't mind, before we get fully into this episode. We're going to have a moment in silence to remember those that have paid the ultimate price. Thank you, guys. All right, we're going to get underway. James, you brought up we're doing managerial harassment. I'm going to go ahead and let you lead off with that.
All right. So this week, quite a few stations have had a stand-up talk, some haven't, on stationary events. It's a big one that they've been pushing on the city side, and now it's starting to flood over to the rural side. And any stationary event over, I think my supervisor said 7 minutes they get flagged for, but some say 5, some say 10. So, but it's not just in my office. I was talking to Bill the other day, and he said it happened in his office as well. So this is coming down the pipeline to a lot of people. So I'm going to let Bill start with this one because it also happened in his office. And Bill, what is the procedure when it comes to stationary events from management on the scanners?
Well, first of all, that information isn't supposed to be used for disciplinary procedures. Second of all, the stationary events, my particular situation was in regards to a a bowel movement, and I was questioned about it, and I was polite enough to explain to them that I had to use facilities, and they wanted more detail. And by the time I got done giving them all the detail, they turned around and told me they didn't want that much detail. So I know that in the future they'll never ask me again. The problem with stationary events, and this is all based on back when we had the scanners that had the function for load and reload. That was a problem because that was a footnote on what you did and how you did it and how long it took you to do it during the course of the data collection programs. I was meticulous in it, and therefore I never got caught stationary event except for this one situation. And when you turn around and you have stationary events, ladies and gentlemen, you can explain them as reloading. You can explain as a customer, you can explain them as you are rehydrating, you are cooling down, you're underneath a tree, trying to get your body together. You can give any number of explanations in regards to stationary events. But the stationary events, most do not abuse because of the fact that we want to get done, get out of the heat, and get home. When it comes to management, listing on the stationary events, you have plenty of tools to fall upon. And the particular one is with the upcoming weather is that you are directed to cool down, get out of the vehicle, get in the shade, rehydrate, and use that all you want as often as you want because safety is the number one issue that you can win any type of argument on. As long as you're not abusing it day in and day out, if it's 75 degrees out, you shouldn't be stopping 4 times for 20 minutes to rehydrate. The other problem with the stationary event, people have cluster boxes. And I've seen this in my office where a gentleman has 6 cluster boxes and he's getting tagged for stationary events every day. How stupid can you be not to realize it's going to take in 20 minute service 6 16-unit cluster boxes with parcel lockers and collection units? And it just doesn't register with management. They don't care because, like our so-called engineers who put Rex together, they're looking at the data. They're not looking at anything else except for the numbers. The numbers say, oh, you were there for 22 minutes. Where was I at? At your CBUs. How many CBUs were? And you have to pull teeth out of these people, make them realize that it's a valid stationary event. This is what we fight every day. And these are rooms and district people who are putting pressure on the postmasters, who are putting pressure on the supervisors, who are just following orders, which doesn't alleviate them of their responsibility of explaining it to their superiors. Just pass it on down onto the carrier. And it doesn't matter if you have a valid reason for station, a rural reach. Okay, you didn't put it in the scanner. You brought the card back. Guess what? If I'm a steward, I can get you off on that one. And then you can turn around and do rural reach, information off the card you brought back. If you're helping a customer, I've done it a number of times. I have several elderly women on my route that I've helped pull groceries out of there, but it doesn't take me 20 minutes. It takes me 5-6 minutes so I don't get questioned about it. But protect yourself. Don't overuse it. Don't abuse it, and be ready to answer it. Be ready to explain your stationary events. Still, they can't use that for disciplinary procedures.
You're right. It's the scanner data alone cannot be used for discipline. GPS data alone cannot be used for discipline. There's actually paperwork out there for it that says that scanner data cannot be used for discipline. But management's going to try to, because just like the express failures that occur every single day. Management doesn't care that the expresses fail. The customer cares, but management doesn't, because they're of the thought process that, well, one out of 100,000 customers will go in and actually get their refund for the express mail failure. So it's worth it for us to fail them so we don't have to pay the carriers extra to deliver them, on the off chance that one in 100,000 people are actually going to go in and get their refund for their express mail. But I've been questioned on my stationary events, and I literally had him on my end of shift duty. I had him sit down and show me exactly where they were. And I'm like, oh, yes, that is my bathroom break stop. That is my reload spot. That is my reload spot. That's the gas station where I fuel up the truck. Stuff like that. It's like, do you guys not even think about this or look at what's going on? No, you're looking at a computer, you're getting info from a spreadsheet. And as we know, when you only pay attention to the spreadsheets, you fail at your job miserably because you are not doing your due diligence to figure out why things are happening like that. And that is the biggest caveat to all of this is management did not do their due diligence. They expect you to roll over and give them the answer to discipline you on. They're expecting you to turn around and say, oh, I was taking a smoke break. Oh, I was stretching my legs just because I wanted to walk around for a minute. Oh, I was eating my lunch. Things like that, things that are not considered part of the job. Hydrating is part of the job. That is the HIP training that they give us. If you paid attention during the HIP training, it says to frequently hydrate. It says cool off in the shade. Our city brother Gates, died because he was harassed for stationary events. He was taken back for a pre-disciplinary interview, and that is how the manager said it. It was a pre-disciplinary interview, which means they already had discipline planned. And in that, they state this could lead to discipline up to and including termination. They like to put the fear into you. Don't let them make you fear them. You know you were working. You know you were doing your job. You also know if you weren't doing your job. But if you were doing your job, you were doing what you were supposed to be doing. I was working. You were sitting there for 10 minutes. What were you doing? I was working. They continue to question. I'd like my designated union rep, please. Invoke your Weingarten rights. You do not have to answer any questions of management without your union rep present, because anything you say will be misconstrued, misinterpreted, and misapplied when used against you in discipline. Kristen, your thoughts?
Oh, I agree with both of you on that one. Luckily, I know in my office, stationary events haven't been a big issue as far as I can see. I know our 204B, who is our city PTF, he did mention that they did do a stationary event training last week as we were out on the smoking bench chit-chatting, and he mentioned that, but it was more geared towards city than it was rural anyways. But yeah, that's my whole thing. If they want to come at me on a stationary event, I'm going to say show me where it was and I can tell you exactly what was going on. Like Bill, I've got a lot of elderly on my route. In fact, I have one that had open heart surgery a couple weeks ago, and I knew she was going to be having open heart surgery. She had told me ahead of time. And I told her I'd keep an eye on her mail, and if it started piling up, I'd bring it to the door for her. Well, it'd been a few days, so I took it to the door and checked in on her, make sure she was okay, which she was, and she was very, very grateful for me doing it. And I told her I'd check in again, later this next week, just to see how she was doing. And because her neighbors are seasonal, but they're home right now, so she's thankful for that, and so am I. But yeah, you never know what that may be. I have construction going on my route right now. I am in a destination tourist area. My half of my route is on US 23, 2-lane highway. I'm gonna have to sit and wait for traffic to clear to go around a construction sign, or weave in and out of construction barrels if need be. So yeah, I am prone to have to sit there longer now. So they can come at me all they want, because then I can turn around and be like, well, I was reloading, moving my mail around there, doing the same there, checking in on a customer there, another customer stopped me there. Oh, yep, that's my fuel loading, or gassing up, I should say. There, unless you're just dicking around, and if you're actually taking a lunch break, if you're actually eating your lunch, you should be clocked out for a lunch break, and would see that. But the normal stuff that you're gonna do on the job, if they want to come at you about stationary events, I was working. In one capacity or another, I was working. Plain and simple. And again, if they want to get in to be trying to harass you, that's where you stop it and invoke your wine garden rights and tell them you want your steward present for anything further.
You would also probably get them for waiting for traffic to clear to get out of your businesses and driveways that you have to go into to deliver, right?
I have a lot of businesses, yes. I am in and out of a lot of driveways along 23, both the north end and the south end of town. So yeah, plus my condos if I'm having to wait for traffic to clear, absolutely. Some days, especially with the construction and stuff, traffic slowing down and it's heavy. Friday was a bear out on that route with the traffic. I won't deny that. So yeah, that's what happens. It happens. They can't, be like, you saw the traffic outside the window. You tell me. You're sitting in your office. You can see the traffic outside that window.
About
How about you,
Toasty.
Timothy? You had any issues with you going to all those CBUs and on your route with any contact on stationary events or anything like that, or what are your thoughts?
We haven't gotten anything. I updated y'all, I think 4 weeks ago when they started the lunch thing. You have to be clocked out. Anytime you take a break, because some RCA's were sitting in front of Taco Bell without clocking out. But at the same time, the supervisors never actually went out there to observe what they were doing in front of the Taco Bell. They could have been reloading. They could have been doing something else. But it's one of those things where they have to go out there and actually observe you. I'm surprised I'm not on the list because I've been setting up these CBUs before they get the sticker or before they get the keys in. I put the sleeves that we usually have on your DPS trays that have your route and what tray it is, A, B, and C. I put those sleeves in and then I stick in the uh, little tags so that way the addresses are nice and neat to the left. That way anyone who runs my route knows where exactly each address is. And it takes me about 15, 20 minutes to do all that, especially at a 7-unit CBU. So thankfully I haven't gotten anything on that, but if it does come down the line, be glad to ask for an 8191 and smile.
Oh, yeah, I can, I've been playing spring cleanup with my mailboxes this past week. A lot of them were my CBUs. And yeah, definitely. I mean, if they want to say something, well, why are you sitting here? Well, I had to. At that point, I would just put the tub and a half of mail that I brought back from cleaning out my mailboxes and be like, here's your reason why. Thank you. Bye.
And as a footnote to this whole conversation about the stops, when I was questioned about my bathroom stop, they actually looked at me and said, "Well, you need to put that down as a break." And I told them, I said, "No," I said, "that ain't happening." And they said, "Why?" And I says, "Read the contract and then get back to me." And I just walked away from them at that point. But like James was saying, it's mismanagement, and that just solidifies what I'm saying. They pass it down from district, the POOM, the PM to the supervisor, and the supervisor's just a lemming, and they're
Yes, man.
repeating the same thing the people above them are saying without looking into the situation as regard as are you stationary at a CBU? Are you doing whatever you're doing? They don't even do it. They just question it because they don't have the management skills of their own to bother knowing where your stops are, where your traffic, where your construction, where your school zones, where anything is. The question, where the comment was about, making sure you have your dismounts in. How many times have people gone in and done their DPM and found dismounts missing?
Mm-hmm.
Footage missing. Yeah, this whole system is corrupt, and I'm standing at the front door, and it's telling me I'm 387 feet away from the house for a certified. What the hell? I mean, I haven't seen that for almost 2 years now. I got one 2 weeks ago like that. I was like, hold on. I said, this is a blast from the past or what? But management, again, like James says, they don't do their jobs. So it's a lot easier just to accuse you than to look into the situation and vindicate you, because that's not their intentions. They don't have any intention of vindicating you. They're just going to follow, the word from the people above and then proceed from there. And if it goes disciplinary, then it goes disciplinary, which gets blown out of the water.
It kind of reminds me of that old game we played in elementary school, the telephone game where you start,
Mhm.
the teacher tells one kid and they whisper it all around the circle and it comes back and it's completely different. How much of that, when there's a directive handed down from way up above as it goes through the chain, that each one of the management's not putting their own twist on it before it finally gets to the office?
I would call that managerial discretion.
Well, what Bill was saying, it's also there's also another aspect to this as well. Why would you want to go out and do all that work of actually trying to figure out what was going on or trying to look up on Google Maps where they were at or things like that, when you can just go harass the employee and get them to admit that they did something wrong? Then you've got them admitting to it, they're guilty of it. You don't even have to do too much paperwork on that, and you can discipline them on it. And that's the biggest issue of all is they're trying to find ways to discipline people. They're trying to find ways to make paperwork on people. I don't know if maybe this is some kind of performance evaluation of how many employees you can discipline, how many employees you can get paperwork in their file on, stuff like that. But it's happening all over this country, and it's not just stationary events. I was just talking with a carrier today on this, and I asked specifically for permission to talk about this on the podcast, and I was given it. And they said, this is all about Sunday work that I wasn't notified or on the schedule for Sunday, but they texted me, not called, late Saturday, that I'm working Sunday. But I got a late urgent phone call that a family member was in the hospital, so I called off. But they want documentation. So I asked what documentation are they looking for, and they wouldn't tell them. He said, I have proof, but I don't have any documents. I don't know what documents he wants, and he won't tell me. So he tried to write me up for AWOL, but I said I'm not signing that, but I don't think that's the right document. And it turned out the document was the 3971 leave slip, which would mean that he knew he was scheduled that day, but he got it in a text message. I talked with him. He clarified that he did not reply to the text message, but he did call on Sunday and say he was not coming in. But this is one of the things that they'll do. They'll not have you scheduled. They'll text you or try to call you in. And if you can't come in, then they'll discipline you for saying you were scheduled, but you didn't show up. It's another type of managerial harassment we have out there. Bill, what's your take?
Well, I'm always confused about, especially when it comes to the parcel deliveries on Sundays and holidays, and they text you, which you don't have to respond to because it's still not an accepted form of communication. But if they do call you, okay, and you don't answer the phone, I mean, you have a million ways to get out of that. I mean, first thing you say is, well, my battery died and I never recharged it until 10:30 Sunday morning. But if you don't have nobody's on call for Sundays and holidays for parcels. It's not the carrier's fault that you didn't schedule correctly, that somebody habitually calls out on a Sunday, especially with an attached Monday holiday. historically, we've had people like that in our office, and I'm a little confused about. You're not covering a route. You're covering, you're delivering parcels, and I still, I'm baffled because of the fact that we're fulfilling our primary assignment 6 days a week of delivering the mail. I didn't know that there was any language saying that we are required to deliver parcels on Sunday, which is kind of forced on us. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see any language in there mandating us to deliver parcels on Sunday.
There is language for
Well,
Sunday and holiday
You know,
delivery.
well, there is, but I'm saying in regards to the procedures of calling people in,
Hmm.
you're assuming that it's the same as for Monday to Saturday, but Monday to Saturday you're also delivering a route. So I'm a little conflicted on that bullshit. Okay, I don't, and trust me, we've had subs, knowledgeable subs, sit there and tell supervisor the day before a Sunday and say, we need an extra carrier in here because we're going to be short. And the supervisor just doesn't catch on. And then the, perpetuator of Sunday call outs calls out on Sunday and they're short a sub. And next thing you know, they're out till 6 p.m. on a Sunday delivering parcels. I mean, I don't know about your office. Our office, everybody knows who's going to do what when. Okay. It's not, a secret. We're all aware of these people. If somebody tells you you're going to need an extra sub, you know what? It would be easier to get the extra sub in there beforehand, get everybody home earlier, keep their hours down. If you want to maintain under 40 hours for a week, which most offices can anyway, but you can reduce the amount of overtime everybody's getting if you are properly trained as a supervisor. If you're aware of your office limitations, personnel that are under you, the amount of parcels that are coming in. We used to get projected parcels in for Amazon Sundays on Friday afternoons. That way they can schedule the appropriate amount of people. We don't get them anymore. It's just, hit or miss, whatever shows up, it's got to be delivered. But to me, it, unmitigated bullshit that, you're going to call somebody in late to cover a Sunday. No, if you don't have at least 24 hours notice, you're not getting a response.
Ethan, your thoughts?
I don't have Sunday delivery in my office, but I don't see why they should have been listed AWOL, number one. I remember doing Sunday delivery in my old office. There was a couple instances that I did call in for Sunday, and nothing came about it towards me.
Mhm.
But again, this was 7 years ago. So yeah, it's hard to say. I don't agree with it, but and texting still is not an approved form. There is language out there. USPS does not supply us our phones. Therefore, no, they're not supposed to communicate with us via text. As much as you want to pound that in, and I do have that language posted on our rural bulletin board in our office, it still doesn't stop them. We at least stopped them from messaging us on our scanners. But if they text message us out on the route, I'll get the text on my phone and I glance at it, or on my watch, and I'll glance at it and be like, yeah, whatever. And, I'll talk to them when I get back to the office. And then I get back, well, did you get my text? What text? I don't know what to talk about.
And and yeah, Josh, there is an order of consideration for Sunday delivery that has nothing to do with being notified on a Saturday that you're going to be working on a Sunday without 24 hours notice and without proper communication. Again, the text is not an acceptable form of communication. Anybody that knows Bill May, don't text me if you want to get a hold of me. If you want to get a hold of me, you better call me because I check my text probably twice a day, right around lunchtime and before I go to bed. Otherwise, it's not important.
I know this for truth because I have texted him, and it was like the next day when he got back to me. I can't tell you, this is the truth. Bill does not check his texts.
He's
Okay.
old school.
unless about the only time he actually did was with, he tried calling me, I missed the call, I tried calling him back, and he was either on another call or busy, and then so I texted him, and then he got back to me right that because it was we were playing tag on phone calls there. But yes, I can attest you, call Bill, don't text him.
It takes him a while to dial your number on the rotary phone.
Hey, I used to
Rotary,
have.
I got to crank it. I got to crank the wall phone up and say, "Hey, Gracie, can you get a hold of Kristen for me?"
I can attest. I was a whiz at those rotary phones, man. At times I won radio station contests when I was young. On the rotary phones, having to dial in to be a certain caller, I could do that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Toasty?
Like on the texting, or well, for sure on this case, it's not texting is not a form of communication. If you want to do it, just like glance at it, like, hey, there's a package at such and such. If you want to check it out, if I'm already past it, I'm already past it. I'm not going to go back, mess up my line of travel to go check on a package that's in a parcel locker that won't open. And also the less than 24 hours notice. I know for me, I got called in one Sunday because they're like, hey, you're supposed to be here on Sunday for Amazon. So I showed up, and sure enough, my supervisor got in trouble on the Tuesday because in our district, we're not allowed to work more than 7 days or 6 days in a row. So the seventh day you're supposed to have off. And because he called me in on Sunday when I wasn't scheduled and he read it wrong, sorry, he actually, got talked to by the POOM saying, hey, why is he working 7 days straight? This and that. And this is back when I was on hold down. So sometimes they mess up on the schedule. It's not your fault. They can't really discipline you for what's their fault. They'll try to, which is why they do the PDIs, which is why they try to, get you to slip up just a little bit so that way they can use it against you. But that's basically, y'all went over everything already. So
Yeah, it's crazy to think that somebody could turn around and just tell somebody they're going to get disciplined for not showing up on a Sunday because they were supposedly scheduled through a text message that they just never got or saw in the morning and called and said, "Hey, I'm not going to make it because I've got this other thing that I'm doing. I'm out of town already. I was out of town since yesterday because I wasn't on the schedule." Something as simple as that. You can't prove you were out of town per se. If you were visiting family or something like that, you're not going to have a hotel receipt or anything like that. How can you prove you were out of town visiting family? Things like that. This is straight up managerial micromanaging and harassment. There's more to this story with this carrier. They are constantly scheduled Sunday Amazon. No rotation whatsoever. They rotate the other subs, just not this one sub, and other aspects to it as well. But continuing on, there is a carrier out there who has been removed from the post office for emailing management with issues including managerial harassment and safety issues in their office. To the point I have to call this out because this manager carried in a bow from a bow and arrow into the office and set it in front of the scanner rack where this carrier's scanner is. So I'm calling it out here on this podcast because this is not right. This carrier was letting management know what was going on. A hostile work environment that started with sexual harassment And this management turned around and wrote this carrier up for emailing concerns to management. Now, I don't know about you, but this has total vibes of the Memphis series that Corey put out on From 8 Arbitration. Somebody was screaming from the rafters, telling management of issues going on in their office, and management turned a blind eye.
And from my understanding, the union didn't do much about this manager either.
No, no. Bill, you want to start off on this one? Without going too
Well,
deep down the rabbit hole?
First of all, I'd be a little concerned that, somebody would bring a weapon into the post office without being fired, arrested, prosecuted.
Mhm.
A bow, just because they didn't have the arrow in their hand, does not mean that's not a weapon.
Mhm.
I mean, folks, it's just, I know a little more about this story in regards to what we're just talking about. And this is where we have to stand together as an office to protect each other, because what they've done to this carrier, they'll turn around if they get away with this free and clear. They'll turn around and do it to everybody else in that office, whether it's sexual harassment or just regular harassment, intimidation. They will pursue this course of action because of the fact that they've gotten away with it. Why the postal inspectors weren't called? Why the local police weren't called? And let me tell you, there's a policy you're not supposed to take pictures inside a post office. Everybody in the office taking pictures of that damn thing is proof positive. You're not going to fire the entire craft if they all have pictures of a bow sitting up at the scanner locations.
And if
And there is
management,
it's zero tolerance for all types of harassment and intimidation.
and it was obvious
So,
harassment because, anybody,
yeah,
if you're going to have, if you're an avid hunter or even if you're just a hobbyist with bows and whatnot, and I can understand, okay, you didn't have a secure location in your vehicle. Maybe you got one of those funky vehicles, you didn't have room for your trunk. If that's something as a managerial and you feel the need you need to bring it in the office, you would be locking it up in your management office, not leaving it where everybody can see it. To me, yes, that to
exactly.
me is threat.
Mhm.
And where it like you said, where's the union on this?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Why haven't we started an MOU 25 on this manager?
Hello?
Why haven't we used publication 552 against this manager? And if you want to know about publication 552, From 8 Arbitration does have an episode on publication 552, and it applies to everyone.
552 is the management. There is also the 553, which is the employees.
Yes.
So I have the 553 printed out, actually. But yes.
And it applies to all management, all of them, from your lowly 204B all the way up to the Postmaster General. It actually applies to him as well.
And this
But
is something
harassment
that's not craft specific. It is across the board for postal employees.
is just as applicable as the joint statements on violence in the workplace and harassment. Toasty, your
Frequency
thoughts?
puts up there. Frequency put up there that the bow's not considered a weapon as codified in U.S. law. Let me show you how I can use a bow without an arrow as a weapon.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
string can do
You
some
can,
damage.
And
yes.
if that thing was in my office, I'd have picked it up by the bowstrings. I'd have put it in my car, and I'd have taken it to the police station to have fingerprints on that damn thing run, and then had that son of a bitch arrested.
Yeah.
That's me,
And
though.
yeah. And you can use pretty much anything for a weapon. I mean, we've all watched the John Wick franchise. He killed a man with a pencil.
Who can
Jason
do that?
Bourne, MacGyver, stuff like that. But Toasty, what are your thoughts on this situation?
It sounds god awful. Plain and simple. Just you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to report. You're trying to create that paper trail with the emails, and then have someone turn around and, basically harass you or try to intimidate you. It can even, if it started with sexual harassment, surprise it in, oh, let me find their Facebook profile, print out a skimpy picture and post that up everywhere to embarrass you. It's ridiculous that people do this in my mind. You know, I just want to go to work. I just want to do my job and I want to go home to my family. I don't want to have to deal with like somebody coming up to me, starting rumors, you know, yes, we converse in the corner because, we call ourselves the corner crew. We're in the back corner of the office on a few of us on the routes. And, we joke around and stuff like that. But for the most part, as soon as I get all my mail cased up and the packages are ready to go, I'm out the door. Like, y'all have a good day. I'm not standing in the heat that long later. So the harassment needs to stop. It needs to go away. Let us come in, let us do our jobs. If we can improve on our jobs, say, hey, just so this area, is complaining about, how you're, leaving the packages on the steps instead of on the front porch. Okay, go a little bit further, 5 feet, put it on the porch and whatnot. But to harass somebody in retaliation is absolutely absurd. 100%.
Yeah, any time stuff like this is happening in your office to any carrier, you need to have their back. You need to have your brothers and sisters back because right now at this day and age, management is getting away with almost murder in these offices. And they're getting on RCAs. They're getting on PTS. They're getting on regulars. It's almost a free for all with management. And sometimes you just have to stand up for yourself and other carriers because at this point, it feels almost like we're on our own. There are a lot of good designated union reps out there, but it's time to put our foot down. It's time to stop the harassment. It's time to be a union together as a craft. Now, I have another one for you guys.
Let
And
me
this,
put a caveat in there, James. Back in the day, police officers had a quota for traffic tickets, parking tickets, and stuff like that until it came to light. And then, the courts overruled on there saying you can't do this anymore. It seems almost like the United States Postal Service has come up with their own quota system in regards to issuing PDIs, INIs, or whatever you want to call them, and the disciplinary procedures that they want to inflict upon the crafts, and all crafts, not just our craft, but on the crafts themselves, just as they're cracking down all the time. And this has fostered this atmosphere where they need to perform by finding fault with what we do. How is that a cooperative work atmosphere? How is that fostering any type of, uh, you know, community within the post office in regards to getting the job done? Jobs that we were hired to, that we're committed to, and yet these offices that I know of, and my office used to be like that years ago, just basically harassed you to the point of having you admit something. Like James said earlier, they talk to you, indiscriminately. The next thing you know, whatever you said is used in a PDI. Up to you and says something about a missing parcel. You better keep your mouth shut until you get union representation there, because they'll use that information against you. Unless you're savvy enough to answer the question, don't answer the question. Go ahead, James.
You're completely right. I was just talking with that carrier that's going in for that discipline for that. And I told them, unless you know word for word the question they're asking you when they ask it to you, I can't answer that without further clarification. You don't want to go in there and admit that you know what 514.2 of the ELM is. You don't want to admit that you've read the entire ELM if you haven't. And that's a big document. But the biggest things of all is when you're in those pre-disciplinary interviews, which if they call it a pre-disciplinary interview, it means they already decided to discipline you. They're just quote unquote giving you your day in court so they can issue the discipline. I don't like that. It's an investigative interview where they find out your side of the story. There's a lot of caveats to doing investigative interviews to issue discipline. And if management doesn't follow them, you bet your backside there's a union representative out there that can use that against management to win the grievance. And if a union representative is worth their weight in gold, they will get that discipline removed. They will find that little caveat that management made a mistake on to get that discipline removed. And then you have the fact that after you get the discipline removed, management retaliates against you. Management retaliates against you for grieving things. That's grievable as well. I know it sounds like you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Management disciplines you. If you grieve it, they retaliate against you. But if you stay on it and you do what Bill says,
File, and smile.
then you'll end up turning around and eventually getting management to finally realize that all the paperwork they have to do on you isn't worth it. Like we said at the beginning of this episode, management will do everything they can to not do any work to find out why stuff is happening, why your stationary events are happening. It's the same with the grievance procedure. Once you get too much paperwork in front of them, they start going, this is too much of a hassle for me. I'm going to move on to somebody who's easier to pick on. And that's where having an office that is understanding of the proper procedures, proper rules, the contract, and things like that will get a manager to finally settle down and back off the carriers. Would you agree, Toasty?
Absolutely. Like every time that they try to bring something down, like that lunch thing, when mini meals, we started RRACS. One of the other things was authorized dismounts, and they were saying, "Oh no, we already multiplied it by 3. This and that. It's already included. You only use authorized dismount at schools and businesses because that's what the paperwork said, even though it said schools, businesses, etc." So when I asked them for documentation, can I please get that in writing? They kept going around, running in circles, doing anything they could not to put it in writing. So, of course, we simply all wrote statements, gave it up to our ADR, who then gave it to the DR, who chewed out the person who came down with that, and it eventually went away. And they're realizing, since they weren't trained on it, of course, we weren't either, really. But it was one of those things, just when you start to file and you start to get the statements and you start to put the work in, they start to realize, okay, maybe I should back off on this. Okay, maybe I can't really put this in writing because I'm not going to put my name to it because they'll throw me under the bus, which is what happened to my supervisor. They threw him under the bus for giving out the authorized dismount speech even though it came down from up top. So that they'll eventually turn on each other. It happens all the time because they're all looking for their own promotion at being yes man instead of actually putting in the good work and actually helping customers and carriers.
Yeah. Kristen, you want to follow up on that?
Well, I mean, in my office, you just threaten a grievance and management will tend to back down. For some reason, my postmaster is scared to death of grievances. As my new local steward is finding out, it's rather entertaining when he and I are talking about that. But yeah, it's a matter of if you have management that doesn't care, then bury them in paperwork. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, regardless, and file. If you have a grievance, file it. They want to retaliate, well, file on the retaliation. I couldn't have told my coworkers that enough, but they still would never file. And, it's unfortunate that they won't stand up for themselves, but yeah, it comes down to, bury them in paperwork when the need be. That's the only way that we have to fight them is through the grievance procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people have tried the grievance procedure and it's failed them miserably.
I've heard
But
many, many, many horror stories of that happening, unfortunately.
I've heard of it in way too many places that it shouldn't be happening at. Carriers giving me the information, giving me actually their grievance paperwork that they had, and I'm looking at it going, why did the steward do that? Why did the steward settle for that? Why did the steward throw it out for that? Little things. And grievances that could have easily been won had the steward just taken the time to actually fight the grievance.
Investigate it.
Little, yeah, little things. And how many times do we have to say, fight for the craft every day as if it was your own? I was told in my steward training, when I took the steward training to become the elected local steward before I was decertified, I was told specifically by my district representative that when you get a grievance from a carrier, that is now your grievance. It is your responsibility to settle it in the best way you think possible. Get the best for the carrier that you can on that grievance. Because the next time it happens, you're going to beat that. You're going to make it even better the next time. Because not only do you have precedent with the first grievance, you have standing with what the resolution was the first time. So you can ask for more as an incentive for them to stop violating it.
And eventually
Okay, Bill, you
There's a
want to
little
finish this up,
irony in
Bill?
this whole there's a whole bit of irony in this discussion because of the fact that if you're active on social media, most of us are, not that I'm very good at it, but I try to scroll through. Isn't it amazing that you will find more complaints than compliments for management, and you will find more complaints than compliments for stewards? Is it the lack of steward training? Is it the failure to, properly educate them, follow up? Or is it a matter of, settle the grievance for the least amount of, discipline, uh, just get it resolved? The situation we had in our office when I was decertified was, I had to give all my paperwork to my DR, which I did, and then that DR subsequently retired from the national steward system, and a new DR was assigned and came in and was settling grievances that I had from 2 years prior. Now, a DR had these in their hands for over 2 years and didn't bother to settle them. I mean, all the paperwork was there. All you had to do was go in there and say, You got no case. Sign this. Pay the carrier. Be done with it. And fortunately, this new DR has stepped in and done that on a number of grievances that were years old. Unfortunately, they could have lost or had the grievance thrown out because of untimeliness, but they made a settlement and settled the grievance and got something for the carriers. Whereas the previous DR with 20 plus years experience was sitting on them. And I'm amazed that we have more horror stories than we have complimentary stories about our steward system and about our management. Some of these carriers say, "Oh, I got great supervisors, I got a great postmaster." I would love to find those offices because I haven't had that in over 20 years. We had a horrible postmaster who was horrible to everybody, but we got our mail in a timely fashion. We were given specific directions to your face. There was no subsequent handing it down to the supervisor who could turn around and reword his phrases into something else. He told you what to do. He walked the floor every day, watching the clerks, watching the city carriers, watching the rural carriers, watching the truck drivers. And even though we didn't like him personally, we appreciated his professionalism because he was an asshole to everybody. But he was doing his job of making sure we did our job. And I miss that. I miss that structure because what we have now are a bunch of people that are plugged in to management with no experience, no education, and no gall to stand up to the people above them in regards to violating the contract on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree. We've got, you know, it, my manager won't go around and watch. She'll just stand or sit perched up by the supervisor's office desk and with her arms crossed with a look of disgust and just stare at everybody. Like, really? Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye. It's like we had a service talk. We had to have a stand-up talk for a change in procedure because they were not doing the correct postal procedure, and my steward brought it to their attention, and of course it took them 2 weeks to finally do the stand-up talk about the change of office procedure because they were then informed that they were not following postal procedure for this. So they had to embellish to say, no, this is going to create more work for everybody. And it really isn't. But anyways, I kind of spearheaded that myself after I got a little love note at my desk saying I was scanning customer holds improperly by scanning them the 2-5, the customer hold, and how they're supposed to be delivered to agent. Well, no, that's not the proper way. I found the proper procedural in writing that came from management themselves saying this is how it's supposed to be done, directing management. And after I got that little love note, and my steward took care of it, and he settled it prior to the grievance procedure, and they were forced, and he told them, if you do not do the stand-up by Friday, this was 2 weeks after he clarified with them how it was supposed to be and had them sign an agreement. And he told them, you don't do it by Friday, I'm filing the grievance. I was not the only one that got the little love note, by the way. And I was the only one that acted on it. And we finally got it, and they wanted to turn it around and make it like it was our fault. No, not happening, honey. This is what you were supposed to do prior because the former postmaster found a way to circumvent the system. And no, not happening. We're doing it the way that subs are trained in an academy. We're doing it the correct way. That's how it's going to be. And I don't care how upset you are because now you might have to run a report to see, or carriers are going to have to pay attention to see if by chance that, customer hold is going to possibly go over the 30 days and have to rescan that package. That was the whole thing it was about, was if a hold went over 30 days, whether, it doesn't happen a lot, once in a while it'll happen with some customers that are coming back from their seasonals, or something may happen while they're gone and they may have to extend it a little bit. You know what? If you're a good carrier and you're paying attention, you're gonna know, oh yeah, they're a little bit, let me go rescan that package customer hold so it doesn't fall off and hit the reports. It was all about being on a list and being on a report. And as much as we tried to tell them before, tendered to agent does not stop the clock on the shipper's side. It makes it show to the shipper that, oh, they handed it off to somebody else to deliver it. They never understood that. Even though we tried to explain that to them, they didn't get it. So then they wanted to come after a handful of us that were scanning it as customer hold and not delivered to agent. Well, honey, that just backfired on you, because now you got to take it back to the correct way. Yeah, it's
we have a saying of you can't make this shit up, and I go in and I explain to everybody that walking into the post office in the morning is like walking into a comedy club that has free parking, no cover charge, no drink minimum. They pay you to be there, and if you talk to anybody in management, your IQ jumps 40 points. And they sit there and they laugh about that. I said, no, really. I said, if you got a supervisor in my office to run an outhouse, they would fail miserably, even if you spotted them a turd and a pint of pee to start the day. And this is because of the fact that these people in my office specifically all came from the clerk craft.
As did mine.
We have comments that, my postmaster helps deliver parcels. My postmaster won't get out of her designer outfits or get rid of her 5-foot-long dread extensions, because that would probably be a safety hazard for her getting in and out of the truck. But the four to five other supervisors have never been qualified to deliver in any postal vehicle, so they can't. And 2 of them are physically incapable of delivering in postal vehicles. So, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place for having anybody in my management team helping us, because they don't see it as being their job. I guess they haven't read their handbooks either.
And as I'm pulling back into the office on Thursday afternoon, my postmaster was taking off in an LLV to go help a sub out on the biggest route in the office, because she didn't want to have to sit there and wait around for him. So she took it upon herself to jump in to go give him help. And I just had to laugh at that one. Because she didn't want to sit around and wait around. But it backfired on her, because she didn't get back till 7 o'clock. And it was quarter to 4 when she was taking off.
And that's the funny part. They're making a decision that's self-serving, okay, and it still backfires on them.
Yes.
You gotta love it.
Oh, I do.
You gotta love it.
I do. I really enjoy that immensely.
All right, the last topic I have is another reach out that I had this week. A carrier on OWCP, or should be on OWCP, didn't know they had to be on OWCP, is getting harassed by management for an on-the-job injury with a 10-pound restriction. And management asking them, well, how can they do their job with a 10-pound restriction? And I'm going, limited duty. You have limited duty. We do not have light duty, but we have limited duty. And management will harass people who get hurt on the job the most. And we saw the news article not too long ago that management is firing relief carriers in their 90 days for getting injured on the job, because they probably were not properly trained to do the job. What's your take on this, Toasty?
Well, we have one carrier right now. It's been out more than 2 years on OWCP, so that we're trying to fight to get the Phantom route, which they finally created, even though they originally said they couldn't because of RRECS. And then now they can't even assign them to the Phantom route for some unknown reason. I know my supervisor is just frustrated with this because he doesn't want to keep posting all these other routes and not posting that one. But it's just one of those things where management doesn't, they just send you to the few days of training, and they mainly go over things about the job. They don't go over like, okay, if you get injured, this is what you do. Oh, here's the accident forms. They're self-explanatory, and then move on from the training on that. They never go into depth, which they need to do. They also need to train you on, even though as rural carriers we don't have a uniform policy, it is still a very, very good idea to follow that shoe policy at least. Non-slip shoes, which Skechers has a very good shoe if you want to go there, not sponsored. And doesn't have the green tag, but they're still non-slip.
I just laugh about this because we have a particular carrier who gets away with it because they may or may not be the office princess, who wears her Hey Dudes every day.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I like the non-slip because I do have a few customers that have tile on their front porch, which if it's any type of moisture, any little bit of rain, those are slip and slides.
Yes, they
so
are.
For the most part, everyone else has concrete, but just a few have tile. So that's to protect me. We've also had freezes here. Again, protect myself, not get injured, because I do love the job. I do love my customers. I don't want to be out for that long on an injury that was somewhat preventable. But management needs to, if they are going to put you in this LWOP status because you didn't file the correct paperwork, or the paperwork got rejected, so you have to backdate it again and go back to another hospital visit or doctor visit or get a second opinion. Management needs to be a little, not necessarily lenient, but understandable, or understanding that this process takes time. It's not instant. Okay, I got doctor's note, boom, I'm on OWCP. It takes filing. It takes filling out the paperwork. Oh, you didn't dot your I here, you didn't cross the T here. We need you to refill it out. We need to stop the harassment. Be human beings. Don't be managers, be leaders.
Kristen, your thoughts?
I think you guys covered that, but as OWCP has changed, it's not filing the paperwork now. It's all done on eComp. You can go in on eComp yourself and you can file that CA1. You can, yes, they have to, give the paperwork for the payment for the hospital to bill properly, but it is, eComp, management puts it off filing it. You can go into eComp and file it yourself as well and get it started.
In fact, it's recommended that you file it yourself on eComp to start. Because most management, as we've known, is not trained on anything. They aren't trained on Rex. They aren't trained to manage. They aren't trained to the contract. And they aren't trained on OWCP. So you would be better off doing it yourself on eComp than waiting on management to figure out how to do the OWCP. And just a little teaser here, we're going to have an episode with Ron Speakman from Fed Up talking about OWCP in a future episode. So we'll actually get into the details of how to file a WCP and what you need to do as a rural carrier for OWCP. And Bill will finish up with your thoughts.
Oh God, I have a great example of OWCP mishandling. We have a gentleman who's had numerous leg operations, and he has limited duty, particularly in weighted parcels. And right before I went out, he called into the office asking why these parcels weren't being delivered. Well, he delivers the mail, he sorts everything out, and a sub takes the parcels out for him. And this particular the previous day, they didn't have a sub available, so he left the parcels there as per his agreement with the post office under doctor's orders. And they brought him in for an eye, and the newly minted steward went in there with him and came out laughing. The steward came out laughing, and the carrier's walking by. He goes, "Oh, these people are just fucking stupid." Now, mind you, this is a 2-month exercise that this guy's on limited duty. And they decided the day that they didn't have a sub, that they failed to schedule a sub to take the parcels out for him, that they were going to perform an I&I, PDI, whatever, in regards to the failure to deliver the parcels. And he has all this paperwork with him as he goes into the meeting. Postmaster comes out and goes over on the city side, which is on the backside of my case. And she's talking to another city carrier supervisor over there. Meanwhile, my supervisor comes out on our side and goes to her desk. And all I can hear, and this is where, you're right, James. They're out there to protect themselves, okay? The postmaster is standing there cussing my supervisor out for failure to schedule an RCA to help on the route. Then why are you having a fit about this guy abiding by his doctor's orders? Why is this the third time that this situation has come up since he's been back for the last 2 months? Don't you people pay attention to the details? Details will kill you. Details will get you fired. You're so right. They're not trained in the ELM, PO 603, the contract, and just basic human rights. They aren't trained. They're just pushing reports. And I can't explain and emphasize this more than enough. Whenever you feel threatened, whenever you feel that there is a situation that may cause discipline down there, shut your mouth, ask for your, union representative, request that one's brought into your office if you don't have a local in your office, and just shut your mouth, because these people have no clue how to proceed in anything from OWCP to just general disciplinary procedures. And you should be able 0.9% of the time because they don't know their jobs.
When I was a truck driver before I worked at the post office, my very first truck driving trainer told me, "You better know every single law on the books when it comes to commercial vehicles, because there's going to be that one day you're driving down the road and this one Barney Fife County Mountie is going to turn around and have this really, really obscure commercial vehicle law that he's looking for on that particular day. They're looking for specific things on specific days to meet their performance evaluations. They don't have quote unquote quotas, they have performance evaluations, which is a quota. But if you don't know that obscure commercial motor vehicle law, they're going to hang you by it. And it's the same here with management. They're told to look for a specific thing, and that's what they're looking for to get their performance evaluation with their supervisor. But you better know every single one to protect yourself. And it's not about inundating yourself with too much information. It's not about knowing every itty bitty little thing. It's knowing enough to be dangerous to management's shenanigans. When you can stand up for yourself and you do it enough, management will realize it is too difficult to deal with that in that situation. Not that you're doing anything wrong, but that management's doing things wrong. So they'll go after the easiest target they can find. So protect yourself at all costs.
All right, guys.
We had a situation.
Go ahead.
Let me bring this one up, Kristen. We had a situation in our office where this one carrier was on a particular hit list for the postmaster. And one day the postmaster came over and started berating him on the floor. And at the time, I was the current local steward. And I went over to kind of, eavesdrop. And he kept going. And I said, "Excuse me, Ron." I said, "Do you mind taking this off the floor and into the office?" I says, "That, it's very unprofessional." He says, "I can do what I want, where I want, whenever I want." I says, "Okay." So I handed the carrier grievance form. I says, "This is for hostile work environment." And his postmaster turned around and says, "You're not allowed to be over here." I says, "Okay." I went back to my case. He continued on. And I went back and gave him another grievance. I said, "This is for threatening you." "What'd I tell you?" I said, I asked you to take it in the office." I said, "You wouldn't." I said, "You're being unprofessional." I said, "I'll just keep handing him forms until I either run out or you stop." After the third grievance form, where I turned around and said, that he was, disturbing, delaying the mail because of his performance was affecting other carriers in the immediate area. I said, "You can keep going on." I said, "But I have over 100 forms sitting at my case." And he said, "Fuck you." He says, "I'm tired of this shit." And he walked away. Well, he thought that was the end of it. So I had that carrier fill out those 3 grievances. Boy, you want to talk about having a fit. And we had a screaming match in his office, and I told him that he would never treat another carrier on the floor like that. I says, "'Cause we'll both lose our jobs that day." "What do you mean?" I says, "Just understand, we'll both lose our jobs that day. But you're not gonna treat anybody on the floor like that in front of me again." I said, "You wanna be treated like with respect because you're the postmaster." I said, "All that is a fucking title." I said, "You have a greater responsibility to us than you have authority over us. Remember that. We can work without you. You can't work without us. And when you start treating us with the dignity and respect that we have earned, what we're entitled to for all the years that we've been here through the 2+ years of COVID," I said, "then you'll get our cooperation." I said, "Until then," I says, "I'll be pissing on your grave." After that, I never had a problem with that postmaster again because I told him exactly where I stood in regards to how he treated people. And after that, every grievance I took to him, when he agreed, I already had the settlement drawn up, signed, and they were paid within 2 paid periods because every grievance I had a financial penalty attached to it. Stand up for yourselves, stand up for others because some people can't, and be a unionized craft as far as covering each other's ass. You don't have to be in a union, but you have to be a craft united against management until they become management that you can work with. And that's what I hopefully accomplish at this national convention, replacing the national leadership with people who will have every carrier's back.
All right, thank you, Bill. How are we gonna wind this down now for this evening?
All yours, Kristen. Run away.
All right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, with management harassment, honestly, the only way we have to fight back is the grievance procedure or an EEO if it goes that far. Which, your stewards are completely outside of an EEO. They can't assist you with that. That is nothing of anything that a steward can do. So, honestly, definitely contact your steward under, if there's harassment going on of any type. That's, as where we stand right now, the grievance procedure is our only fight back with management and their ways of mismanaging. So definitely, stand up for yourself, stand up for the other carriers in your office. It does make a difference. It can make a difference. So definitely, you do that. Reach out. And if you have to go above you have a steward that's not helping you and you have to go above their heads, go above their heads, go up the chain. That's what it's there for. You know, I don't even, yeah, it's sad to see offices where you have management that is so bad that, union hasn't stepped in to fight harder than they should have. They're getting in trouble for going above their management's head and contacting other managers saying we need help. I do know of this situation. This manager has been moved around prior because of issues in the office. So, it's sad that, that's management's way of fixing it is let's just move them to another office. And me, it's not right. I mean, they're going to do the same thing in another office. Wherever you put them, they're still going to keep doing it. And we as carriers have to fight back on it and take it up as far as we can go. So, James, your last final commentary for the night.
As it stands, management doesn't know a thing. And we have to approach everything as if management knows nothing. Because management only does what management is told at this point. It's time for us as a craft to get educated and understand that management is going to mismanage until we teach management to stop mismanaging. So the biggest thing I can tell you guys to take away from this is learn as much as you can. Try to understand your contracts, MOUs, the PO 603, all the documents that are important to your job. Because an educated craft is the bane of an uneducated management. And at the end of the day, no matter what, we're all in this together. Bill?
Oh, the topic of tonight's material was managerial harassment, and barely scratched the surface on it. I think you've hit it on the nail on the head in regards to standing up for each other and learning the documents that affect our jobs, the ELM, the 603, the contract, the RCAM. Oh my God. and yet it amazes me that yet the national board basically puts it on the carrier to be well versed in all this. That would be the ideal situation if everybody was. But take the Rex program, the first 100 pages that came out, and then the next 101 to 111 pages that came out, and then the 97-page version came out. Then the all the amendments to that document, and then you come out with RCAM. ELM, I believe, is 120 some pages. The 603 is over 100 pages. This is a lot of material for people to try to delve into while maintaining their jobs, their personal lives, their family, obligations. So it behooves people like ourselves to do this for them. And, frankly, I don't mind doing it because of the fact that, I have the time and effort and energy to do so. At some point, you have to stand up for yourself. When you feel like you can't, get a hold of us. Text us, put it on our podcast site, and let us know. And we're here for you every day. Like I said, I don't check the text, but thankfully James and Kristen always prompt me to respond when I'm required to, and we're here for you. We might not know all the answers, but guess what? We'll find out. We'll get back to you because we truly care. We're not a bunch of suits sitting down in Alexandria, Virginia that don't give a rat's ass about you. We know your trials and tribulations. We go through them every day with you. whether it's bad, whether it's the weather is bad, the equipment is shitty, the atmosphere in your office is toxic. It doesn't matter. We're here for you. Any time that you falter, give us a call, send us a text, whatever. We're here for you every day of the week, 365 days a year. And we hope you take advantage of our knowledge and our, dedication to this craft, because what is there if we don't stand up for each other? With that, I mean, everybody have a good week. Down in Texas, be careful of the heat. Hydrate. Anybody gives you a crap about your stationary events, just tell them you're, sitting in the shade, cooling down outside of the vehicle, according to, all their promotional materials in regards to heat, exhaustion, and, do the job professionally, efficiently as you can. At the end of the day, make sure you deliver yourself home, because you are the most important delivery of the day.
Toasty, your final thoughts for tonight?
And thinking back a few episodes where we were talking about how many times or how much the post office has paid out on grievances, how much money could they save by simply training management on our contracts? How much money could they save by not harassing us and instead helping us and actually working with us instead of against us? They could have higher retention, which saves them costs. They could have happier employees who call out less, which saves them costs. And of course, they don't have to pay out for grievances because they don't violate, which saves them more costs. We need to work together, but it takes two to tango. That's why we need to read up on our contracts. We need to be educated. We need to be well versed in our contract and PO 603 and ELM, and read over the RCAM. And even a nice little snippet is from the special contract edition of the magazine, when they went over the new additions to the magazine or to the contract. The more educated you are, the more dangerous you are to management. When management starts learning that, hey, they're going to file every time that I violate the contract, let me make sure I don't, then it starts to turn to that mutually beneficial relationship. But at this moment right now, for the most part, for years on end, a lot of us have been kind of complacent. We've been under evaluation for so long. We just kind of, I'll just go along with it. The pay is good enough. I get off, 2 hours earlier than, everyone else. I'll just let it slide. We can't let it slide anymore. We have to fight back. And the best way to do that, file.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it, as I'm sure all of our listeners do. Yes, I mean, if you have that spare time, please, the 603, the contract, the RCAM, all the other ones that lunge out to me is the F21, the M38, publication 552 and 553, JSOV. I mean, it's endless and the amount of reading. I mean, I can't say I've read everything cover to cover, but I have read quite a few when it pertains to a certain issue that gets brought to my attention. It's not only looking for the craft members that reach out to us and helping them, gear them to the correct information, but it's also, for my own benefit too, especially if it's something that may pertain to something going on in my office, or it may not, or it could be something in the future. Even my local steward will still, he's newer, so he'll give me a call or come up to me in the office and be like, hey, it's article such and such from this, or it's outlined in this manual or that one or whatnot. It's just because he hasn't had to deal with everything quite yet, and so he's still learning, and I don't have a problem with it. It's the same thing, with when I'm training my new RCAs. It's going through with the rec scanning and trying to teach them what each one is for, even out on the route. It's all about the educating yourself, and if you can assist in educating your coworkers, that's, going the next step up. And knowing that we're all here to help educate you or point you in the right direction and to get that information and who to reach out for. I had a carrier reach out to me about some issues as well, and I said, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll have the information for you before the end of the day. I reached out to these guys, and I got back to her before the end of the day. After I got home, I had that information for her, got her going in the right direction, and she didn't even know she hadn't had to use any stewards or have union issues before to try and contact somebody, so she didn't know where to look or who to contact. And I said, hey, give me your zip code and I'll figure out who you got to go to. And I found the person contact info. I screenshot it and sent it to her. It's just even that little minute help of pointing somebody in the right direction on who to go to or where to look for the language, and whether it's contractual or in a different manual, and even using management's procedures against them because they're not following their own policy and procedures. The M38 handbook is the management's guide to managing rural carriers. Of course, it's quite a bit outdated, but that's what we have. Just those little things. You could turn around. They're not even following their own policy and procedures, and you have that in writing. You can file on that. And you can force them to be following their own policy and procedures. That's what we have to do to protect ourselves and protect our coworkers and stand up to management. If that's what we have to do, then we have to do it. And we are here for everyone. Whether it's that shoulder to lean on or that ear to vent to, or just say, hey, I don't know where to look. I don't know how to navigate the website, or this, where is there language for this? Getting somebody pointed in the right direction is the least that we can do to help everybody out there. And that's what we're here for. We've got everybody's back, and that's what we want to do. And that's what we're passionate about. So everybody have a safe Memorial Day tomorrow. Again, this is in remembrance of those who have gave that ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms and our liberties. And everybody be safe returning back to work on Tuesday. I know it is not going to be fun at all. And we'll be back next week.
Anybody get a hold of Bill to see if he's coming?
No.